this moment, in particular, Iris, Risa, Jennifer, Terry, but also Tina, and also the communications folks, Sonny and his team, and Carrie, and obviously the research team, which Bill Kelly is here as the leader of. So it's taken us some years to get to this moment, arguably something like a decade of talking, listening, learning, to get to what we are calling, and you will see, is a master plan for the single greatest renovation or restoration that this building has seen in its history. One of the things, two things I think we learned in particular. One is to listen to the great library staff, the library users, the public at large, to do that in an iterative process, so to keep developing plans and perfecting them and refining them as those conversations continue. And the other is to be totally respectful of the amazing, iconic architecture of this building. And in fact, you will see that while we are proposing a plan, or the beginnings of a plan that will bring much more of this building space open to the public, to researchers in particular, we're doing that without any significant sort of architectural breakage, if you will, respecting the architecture but bringing it back to life and to the public for which it was designed. This is the, you will see this all told brings together, given what's happened in the last decade and what we're now proposing, an investment of $317 million, private funds, to make this the greatest, what is now the most recognized and the greatest, most used public research library in the world, to make it even better. So roughly 20% increase in public space, hundreds of more seats for researchers, taking underutilized but beautiful spaces and restoring them to public use, adding exhibition space so that people can be introduced to more of our collections. We also, as you've probably seen in the press, are proposing a third public entrance to the building so that there isn't a congestion on entry, so that people who are coming in for public events or even private events in Bartos don't have to sort of fight for the small doorway on 42nd Street with folks who we hope will be coming to our new Center for Learning. That is, as Bill will describe, an investment in the future of the research library. We cannot take for granted that our kids, that high school kids, college kids are learning the way we all did and cherish the power of the research library. We have to bring them in and we have to show them and teach them, which we can do and we will do. And again, a great new entrance and a great new plaza there. We are fixing the infrastructure of the building, everything from bathrooms to elevators, adding bathrooms, bringing everything up to the 21st century. This is a process that will begin in terms of construction in 2018, so we have roughly a year in which our architecture team will continue to talk with various experts. We'll continue to hear from the public, I'm sure, and be refining those efforts, taking a master plan and turning it into a design. This is a process that, of course, goes back, as I said, already a decade, including the establishment of on-site storage that is preservation value, the Millstein stacks under Bryant Park. So we're now able to retrieve, I think, over 90% of all requests on site within roughly half an hour, as I recall, and make sure that that collection is safely preserved so that future generations can also benefit from them. And of course, the restoration of the Rose main reading room ceiling back to its amazing, inspiring power. We do this for a very simple reason. We believe that this library, that the research library, the public use of a great research library, is more important now than it's ever been. We live in a moment when the key values that the library stands for, that we all share, Enlightenment values, are under threat in a way that we have never seen before, at least in my lifetime, and I'm talking globally. And it's for that reason that we are saying, no, this is when we need to invest to make sure that this building can continue to be a magnet for everyone who wants to think, sit together, and live together, and create and solve problems. So we're super excited. You will see aspects of this plan online. It's been, as I said, developed with feedback from members of the public, researchers, staff. We've had public meetings, we've conducted surveys. You'll hear reference to all of that. And again, we continue to expect to get feedback, and we welcome that, and we will continue to learn from it. This is a master plan, not a final plan. We also know that some of you maybe were surprised that the master plan doesn't include a final decision or recommendation in terms of the stacks. The stacks have not been touched physically. It turns out, actually, we now understand we need them for what we are using, a large portion of them, for this plan to work. For the Mid-Manhattan collection, for other collections that don't require state-of-the-art preservation, but have to be housed on site so that we can do all the other work. So it's part of this process. We cannot do all of this at once and keep the building open and make it possible for researchers to continue to do their work. So we simply never thought about anything other than how to make sure that we could get the building where it needs to be, but not sacrifice years of great work by the researcher community. And we will take our time to study our options for the stack. I'm sure the conversations will continue. And it's better that we take our time than make a mistake. I think we all agree on that. So we look forward to that as well, to that opportunity for the future. I am joined on the stage by the leads of our architecture partners from Meccano, from Holland. We have Francine Huyben here, from Bayer Blinder Bell. Liz Lieber is here, and then Iris Weinschel, the Chief Operating Officer, and Bill Kelly, the Mellon Director of the Research Libraries. Thank you all for coming. We're going to make a presentation. We look forward to hearing your thoughts, and we look forward to an amazing result. Let me just say, if you add what we've done in this building with what we are proposing to do, and what we are doing at the Mid-Manhattan across the street, it's roughly $500 million of investment in the future of the greatest public library here in the center of the crossroads of New York, in addition to hundreds of millions that we are investing now in a systemic way across the branches, particularly in the poorest neighborhoods. So really, an exciting moment with a great team leading that. Over to you all. Thank you all for coming.
Hi, everybody. We thought we would start just by going through the agenda of what we'd like to cover today, and the purpose, what we're going to try to do today is spend a little bit of time of introducing you to the master plan concepts through these slides and images and the short film. And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end that will be facilitated by the library. We'll start a little bit about the objectives and key goals, why we are doing a master plan, what work has been done in advance of this design team coming on board to prepare us for the master plan, what are the components of the master plan, and how do we see getting it done over a timeline, and then finally the Q&A. So why a master plan? As we know from many years of campus planning and institutional planning, you need a roadmap. And the purpose of that roadmap is to make sure that the decisions that you make both in the short and the midterm align with your long-term vision. So we want to make sure that we have that roadmap and a framework in place to make sure that we can make decisions in a manner that supports the mission of the institution. And so this phased renovation, as Tony said, that this is a phased renovation of this building. It addresses structural, infrastructural, and programmatic needs. It minimizes impact to building operations and services and supports the long-term renovation priorities that we'll talk about in a bit. The key renovation goals was to modernize infrastructure, and this is not only the things behind the walls like air conditioning and heating and ventilation and life safety systems, but also when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about elevators and stairs that make it easier to get around the building, and bathrooms and other amenities to help support what people are doing here every day. Improve the circulation, which we'll talk about a bit, to improve the clarity of this building. Improve the public space and increase the public space. We're talking about an increase of about 30,000 net square feet of public space given over to the public. And then finally, to restore the original features, as Bill Kelly says, do no harm. We are here as restoration architects that have a real love and respect for this New York City icon. So before we were on board in preparation for this master plan and for the Midtown campus renovation, there was an assessment of programmatic needs and building conditions that happened for a year before we were here. There were user surveys, research, site visits to other libraries to see how they do what they do, other research libraries, engagement of the trustees, the staff, elected officials, civic organizations, advocacy groups, and other stakeholders, and public town hall meetings. The design team, once we got on board about a year and a half ago, we took that program and the building conditions assessment and updated it with our own eyes and ears, talked to a lot of staff about the program. We did early work in this building, which enabled us to create a swing space on the ground floor for the Mid-Manhattan Library, so that we could begin construction of the Mid-Manhattan Library, which is, as you all know, is already underway. We have a subcommittee of the trustees, of the Board of Trustees. We call them our Trustees Working Group, and we meet with them on at least a quarterly basis, if not more frequently, to get their input. And then, of course, what we've been doing is developing the master plan. So in order to introduce the master plan, we're going to show you a short video that we think encompasses the vision for the plan.
The Stephen A. Schwarzman building is a magnificent example of Beaux-Arts-style architecture and has symbolized the democratic ideal of free and open access to knowledge since it opened to the public in 1911. Today, the Schwarzman building welcomes millions of visitors a year who find inspiration in its majestic public spaces, unparalleled research collections, and vibrant programs and exhibitions.
The Schwarzman building is the most used research library in the world. People come from all over the city and all over the world to use it. Creators, writers, researchers. People want to have access to the great collections here and to be inspired by this space and by each other's company. People are amazed when they walk into this building. It's so glorious, it's so inspiring, it's so filled with people who are enjoying every aspect of what we have to offer. They can't believe that it's all free and that it belongs to the people of New York and to anyone from anywhere in the world. Educators think of this building as an extension of their classroom. They bring their students to use our collections and to understand what it means to do primary research. In recent years, we've already invested $100 million in this amazing building. The Rosemain Reading Room has been fully restored. Hundreds of people fill it at all hours of the day. The Milstein stacks now house millions of our volumes under Bryant Park so that they are readily accessible for quick retrieval and can be safely preserved for future generations to use our collections. We are so eager to get moving on the next phase of the renovation of the Schwarzman building. All told, this will be the largest renovation in the history of this building and part of the largest renovations in the history of the New York Library.
The library, with guidance from the trustees and input from the staff, the public, and other stakeholders, undertook an extensive program and building analyses to identify ways that the Schwarzman building could better meet the needs of its users, both now and in the future. That analysis led us to call on the Dutch architecture firm McKenna, which is led by the founding partner and creative director, Francine Uben, lauded for her visionary approach to library design. We also called on New York City-based buyer Blinder Bell, a renowned expert in historical renovations, with partner Elizabeth Lieber leading the project for the firm. We challenged the design team to figure out how to take advantage of the library's largest research and circulating libraries, and in doing that, to create a bridge across collections, programs, exhibitions, and services. At the same time, the team was asked to respect the characters, the functions, and the physical spaces of the Schwarzman building at the Mid-Manhattan branch, understanding that the needs of the Schwarzman building are unique and complex.
The strategic renovation of the Schwarzman building lies in what I call listening to the logic of the building and reinforcing the original layout of the building and the qualities of the building.
The Schwarzman building is a classic representation from the Beaux-Arts period, with an original design characterized by strict order and symmetry, and a clear hierarchy of spaces.
Although the floor plan is very, very simple, it's not easy to find your way around here.
Over time, due to increased visitorship, introduction of new technologies, and changing needs, programmatic functions have been scattered throughout the building.
The future vision of the Schwarzman building focuses on restoration, circulation, creating much more public space, and supporting infrastructure.
The renovation will restore elements of the Beaux-Arts design, arranging the building so that public functions, like exhibition spaces, remain on the ground floor, while quieter studying and research functions are distributed on higher floors. The renovation will significantly improve the circulation of people, goods, and collections throughout the building. A new 40th Street entrance for visiting groups will make it easier for everyone to get in and out of the building. And the introduction of a new elevator and stairs will dramatically improve building-wide accessibility. Public space will be increased significantly by relocating underutilized back-of-house, staff, and support spaces in order to open the ground floor and other areas on the street level for public use.
Integrated into these renovations are invisible but critical upgrades of the infrastructure to the building systems and the bathrooms. These are essential to support the master plan.
The renovation of this iconic building is a complex project. We are committed to getting it right and to keeping the building open to its users throughout this process.
What constantly circled back during the design process was how the new elements of this renovation will bring more inspiration for the visitor experience, more inspiration for lifelong learning, and even more inspiration for creativity.
Entering the main entrance off Fifth Avenue, visitors to the Schwarzman building will discover a number of new amenities on the first floor. They can explore library collections on display in new exhibition galleries, browse a spaciously renovated retail shop, or grab a quick bite at a new cafe and lounge. Researchers can also venture upstairs to the new Lennox Astor Room, designed for small seminars and up-close interaction with collection materials. As visitors travel through the building, they will appreciate the clear distinction between the busyness of the public functions, now concentrated on the first floor, and the quieter atmosphere supporting research functions on the upper levels. The addition of a variety of public spaces throughout the Schwarzman building will broaden the possibilities for public programs and events that can be offered at the library. Visitors will enter at the 42nd Street entrance, make their way to nearby spaces designed to accommodate a wider range of programs and events. Like a brand new multi-purpose space with restored original finishes, or the newly upgraded Bartos Forum. A new 40th Street entrance and plaza will be created by making modifications to existing cellar space. This entrance will accommodate staff and check-in needs for visiting school groups. These school groups will visit the new Center for Research and Learning, which will further the New York Public Library's mission to promote scholarship for the next generation. Students will be able to interact with librarians and curators as they work with the library's vast collection of primary source materials, exploring and learning at their own pace. Afterwards, they can take a new public elevator or set of stairs that connect all levels of the building on their way to the new Treasures exhibit in Gottesman Hall, which will feature permanent and rotating pieces from the New York Public Library's rarest and most precious materials.
The Schwarzman building, perhaps more than any other building, symbolizes our collective commitment to the kind of society that we want our children to live in. Everyone is welcome to come, learn, write, research, and create. This building is a magnet for the life of the mind, and we have to ensure that that continues for the next century.
Okay, so now that you have a sense of the vision, let me talk a little bit about how it's all maps out in terms of phases and priorities. And Francine will join me up here in a second to also show you some specifics about the proposed projects in the master plan. So we talk about the master plan in 3 phases. Phase 1 is actually the foundational work that's been done from 2006 to the present. So that's 10 years of work that the library has been doing, critical infrastructure and restoration upgrades, as well as programmatic improvements. So that includes the fire alarm system that has been going on, the very important upgrade that's been going on building-wide for a bit now, and that you may see evidence of throughout the building, the restoration of the facade, replacement of the chiller. The Milstein stacks were fit out and the book handling system put in place, the restoration of the Rosemain Reading Room, Glass, and Gottesman halls, and then also the renovation of the Bartos back-of-house areas that's on the ground floor in the center of the building, and that was work that we did to enable the MML swing space. So that's all work that's happened. What we're proposing in phase 2 is additional major infrastructure upgrades, and as we bring new space that was not public before to the public, we need to upgrade the chillers and air handlers in order to provide air conditioning to all those spaces. So that's an example of infrastructure work that will happen, including also the new elevator and stairs on the south side of the building that was discussed in the movie, as well as the renovation of the bathrooms in the building, which we understand to be a high priority for many who use this building. The new 40th Street public entrance to the Center for Research and Learning, expanding exhibition spaces on the first floor that will show both permanent and temporary collections, improved amenities including a new cafe, lounge, and a library shop, and new multi-purpose rooms supporting research, public programs, and staff, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. The next phase from 2018 to 2021 would have, now that we would have the south elevators done, we would go to the north wing to the existing elevators and make necessary improvements and modernization to that. And that's not only to keep them up to current standards, but also to improve the service in the building, to allow them to go down to a cellar level, to allow for better storage and logistics of materials. There will be new multi-purpose rooms on the second floor in addition to ones that we're completing in phase 2, which Francine will show, upgrades to this space itself, and a building-wide wayfinding system. And finally, we have a line at the bottom for future work in 2021 and beyond, which just indicates that there will always be new priorities, there will always be work to be done, particularly in a building of this age and era, that there will always be infrastructure needs, and the master plan acknowledges that those needs continue. So instead of only speaking to these in terms of the priority and the timeline and how it works from construction logistics, we also think about how are these projects meeting our key objectives. And working with the trustees and senior leadership, we determined these 5 buckets or objectives: infrastructure, shared amenities, research, education and exhibitions, and program, event, and public space. And if we sort all these projects into these categories, you find that in all these phases, we're trying to meet the needs and wishes of the different constituencies to whom all of these objectives are important. What this slide also shows is how the costs break down. And as Tony said, this is just over a $300 million project that we're proposing. But note that in phase 1, $144 million is already spent or committed for the project work that we have been doing, that has been done by the library between 2006 and 2016. Phase 2 would spend about the same amount of money, $145 million in project costs. These are project costs, not just construction, and they're escalated. And then phase 3 is an additional $28 million. So in phase 1, a lot of the projects are already completed. Some are still underway, but you know the Milston research stacks, the Rosemary Reading Room, which relatively recently opened, the restoration of Truth and Beauty, the fountains out front on 5th Avenue, and then behind the scenes, some staff support space that has been upgraded to allow for staff to move into better space. So that's a brief summary of some of the phase 1 work. And then we move on to phase 2, which is the proposed master plan work, which Francine is going to talk about now.
Thank you, Liz. What I will do is to explain some of the images you also saw already in the master plan, because in the way the small movie gives you the best overview. For instance, you're here, this image is, you recognize this is 5th Avenue, this is 40th Street, this is MML, but it's now, as you have seen, under construction, it's totally closed down. This is the existing wall here, and with mechanical equipment. And what we do, and look at these 2 windows, for instance, here. What we do, we bring this lower, make these 2 windows, we make them all the way down, so it becomes a door. And it's really at the end where it's now the circulating library. You've been there already, a circulating library in the MML inside the building. At the end, there will be this door. So this will be the 3rd entrance to the building, because nowadays, staff, researchers, or any visitors who come in before 10 o'clock all have to go through the loading dock. That's not the most pleasant and welcoming entrance. And it's really nice, so this is for researchers and staff, but also for the children knowledge center, what will be behind here. So they have also an outdoor space before they go back into the city. So here you see again, old, this is the new. Behind that door is here, so you just entered here through this door. Then there is here the Center for Research and Learning. It's more for youngsters, it's more for secondary school kids, where they get in contact with researchers, so they show them original material, and also get an introduction, because also the big issue for the future is get the young generation interested in research. These pictures are just renderings, they're not designed yet, it's just a suggestion to give you an impression. And what we really try to do is open up the building and use daylight wherever it's possible. And why it's so essential, for instance, to make these 2 new elevator ports, because nowadays, I'm a little bit tired, nowadays, the elevators just go to street level, what I call street level, and doesn't go to the basement. That's why a lot of the rooms that are on street level are used almost like the basement. And so we really, by doing this new infrastructure, like also Liz explained, is we can use the street level for much more public use. This is the first floor, Belle Etage. It's a Beaux-Arts building, so it's the most beautiful floor. In the heart of it is this beautiful Gottesman hall, Ostensibly Hall is a treasure in itself, and the idea is that the treasure exhibit will go into this space, so the most valuable, and Bill can tell you very in a beautiful way about it, will go and will be exhibited in this hall. This space, what is now the storage space for maps. But at the same time, it's a space on Fifth Avenue. It has huge windows on Fifth Avenue. None of them are screened because in a way that collection of maps doesn't like light, but people like light. So the idea is, what if this space becomes more public? The map will be stored in a different way. Maybe it will go to the Milstein research stacks, and that this space can become public. And maybe it could even become a kind of library cafe, a lounge space, so people, because nobody was a big complaint, especially by the researchers, as Bill explained this, is that they cannot have coffee or some food in this building. It's not open flame, it's not a restaurant, and it will not, if it will be a cafe, of course it has to deal with, and with the same opening times as the library. But most essential that this place could become for people and for the public. The existing library shop. The shop is very successful, but it's, you know, it's so cramped you can almost not move there anymore, and it's almost going in all in Astor Hall. So the idea is that, as I explained to you, here is an exhibition space, existing one, Wachenheim Hall. This is then the treasure exhibition, this one. Imagine that these three ones become exhibition spaces. It's more easier for visitors to find their way around there. And that this also becomes an exhibition space. What is nice, because you have the possibility to have also daylight in the exhibition if you want. And also I think what's very important in the whole master plan, that we don't try to mix too much up between researchers and visitors and events. So we make it more logic that they don't disturb each other, but inspire each other. Again, that's not a design, this one, it's just to show you how it could become an exhibition space. This is the existing Celeste Bartos Education Center. It's in South Court, here in the red area. It's above this space where are we sitting now. It's next to the treasure exhibition, the future treasure exhibition. It's not a very well-used space. And what we said, what if that space becomes more the library shop, have more space, but it gives you also the possibility, this rendering we made standing where you enter the South Court. So here on the right-hand side is the exhibition hall, Ostensibly Hall. And we said, what if we have the possibility, there's existing windows, but we can make it down in a very easy way, in a logic way, we can bring it down, so that it has the possibility that if you enter Ostensibly Hall by Astor Hall, it's a very narrow door, that you can, if you want for an exhibition, that you can exit through the library shop. It makes the flow of people in that hall more easy. This is the existing room 2116. This is how the room looks like. It's here on, it's on what I call balcony level. That's the second floor, it's over here. It will change into the Lena and Astor room that also has an own collection of books. And this is the design, I have to tell you. Then you also see what we will do with the future building. So we are really developing new light elements that fit into the architecture of this building, finding a way also to enlight the bookshelving, find out what are the original finishes on the floor, integrate audiovisual systems, put a lot of attention on acoustics. Next to it is room 217. This is the existing one. Again, here this was 260, this is 270. There's a door in between. This is the way it looks now. And what we are doing to make this also a seminar room, you see here the door is open to the Lennox and Astor room. Also developing the right lighting system and chandeliers, and using all tables of this library. There will be upgrades of Barthes Forum. It's more technically, it's about acoustics and air conditioning, etc., and audiovisual. This is the existing children room. Maybe, as you know, is that the children library will go to the Mid-Manhattan library because it's more logic to have the children as part of the circulating library because then they can go there with families. And the idea is next to the entrance on 42nd Street. Here is the Barthes Forum. The idea is that this space, we clean it up totally. We bring back the original finishes, developing the new chandeliers, and it can be used as a reception space as part of Barthes Forum. As you know, if there's, for instance, in New York Public Library Live, it's packed with people, so you have some extra space, but it can also be used for seminar space. So it's one of the multifunctional spaces we are adding, and also not bringing it that people stay on the same level and don't have to go and travel through the whole building. Phasing this.
So this is an initial schedule for the master plan for phase 2 that Francine just described, plus the additional projects. The red line is today, and the blue is design phase, and the gray is the bidding and construction phases. So our current plan is to get started on these projects in terms of design, because this is in planning, and then we need to go into design to design the projects. And we have about a year worth of design, anywhere between 9 months and 15 months, depending on the complexity of the project. And then we go into construction with a projection to complete construction in 2020. And remembering that this is phased construction, trying to minimize as much as possible the impact on building operations. And you can also see that some of the projects are already underway. For example, as Francine said, the Lennox and Astor rooms we're already heavy into design for that. That was a collection that's already in our hands. It's building a room that we would like to open sooner rather than later. So phase 3 has the balance of the projects that I spoke about before, including the north elevators, fine cleaning of the building, wayfinding, and some other projects that Francine's going to talk about now.
Some of the last slides. This is across room 260 and 270. There are smaller rooms, what is very pleasant in this building because people also want to have more collaboration spaces. So these rooms, that not all of them look like as this, because a lot of them look really in a bad state. We will upgrade them a little bit in the philosophy as I showed you of the rooms of 216 and 217. Another thing what will happen, this space where you're sitting now, it also needs upgrades. It's more technically, it's more about behind all these ceilings, and it's more technical stuff. Again, phasing this.
So this is a bit of a shorter phase, but the idea is once we're completed design with phase 2, we would move on to phase 3, and that these projects would all be completed by the end of 2021. And then finally, as Tony mentioned, something that now that we have completed the master plan, that we are starting to look at a stack study, as we're calling it. That is, the objective of it is to explore scenarios. It's not to come up with an ultimate solution, but this is the beginning of a conversation. And so based on a foundation of just what we know about the building already and the stacks in terms of it architecturally and structurally, and what we know programmatically about this building, we'll be exploring various scenarios for future use of this space after master plan implementation. And a lot of talking and listening and developing of initial scenarios will happen in the fall. And then in the spring, we hope to start getting a little bit more specific about some of those scenarios, but again, not landing on a final proposal per se. So that's the summary of the master plan, and I think at this point we're going to turn it over to Q&A, I believe. Yes.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Francine. I'm not going to repeat what you've already heard. I'm simply going to open the floor for questions and discussion. call on people. And Iris and Francine and Liz will be available for responses, as will I. Yes, sir.
Yeah, about the stacks, I'm probably not speaking with, even though I'm a frequent user, as an informed person who really knows what's going on. But just as, from the experience of
Hold on one sec, sir. I think there's a microphone coming on. Yeah. Sorry, if you could begin again so everyone can hear.
Yeah, here you go. Thank you. From the experience of using the library over many years, I remember the days when you pretty much requested a book and as long as it was available, you got it within a short period. Now I frequently experience off-site, which means it's frustrating, and I've spoken to other researchers the same way, that researchers that, it's like a day or two at least to get the book. Are steps contemplated to somehow improve that?
Let me comment in a number of ways to that question. The books that are currently in Bryant Park, the books that the 2.5 million volumes that will eventually grow to our capacity in the building to 4.3 million are available, and we keep a very close watch on timing on that. 27 minutes is the average delivery time. Sure, sometimes books may be longer or shorter, but this is empirical data on those books. I've been working at this library since I'm a kid, really, and I remember a variety of waits waiting for the number to pop up on the screen. I don't think that it was much quicker than that, but memory can sometimes play tricks. Books that are held in recap, that is now a day delivery, but we now have a research item holds issue in which you can request those books in advance and bring them here. The books that are held in Milstein and in recap are held at ideal climate conditions. They're at 65 degrees and a 40% humidity rate. The books that were held in the stacks, the temperature spiked to 83 and beyond. Humidity sometimes dropped into single digits. Not an ideal condition for books. The other advantage of having books in Princeton, that we are now part of a partnership with Princeton, Columbia, and very soon with Harvard, meaning that we have been able to add 7 million volumes to the catalog without any cost to the library. I think that's a major plus in having that partnership in those books. We also digitize books, and we deliver digitally those books that have already been digitized, which is a significant percentage of those books since they're almost all out of copyright. Again, these are books that are rarely called for. We take very good care of them. We get a call for about 2.5% of the collection there in any given year. Our partnership makes us very excited about that possibility, which is only available because we are there. That is not to say that I'm insensitive to the notion, well, I want the book right away, and this book is in Princeton, and you have to give it a day for it to return. But we're doing everything we can to expedite the delivery. And again, the advantage of holding books in ideal conditions and being part of a partnership that have increased our holdings by 7 million volumes seems to me to be a huge plus. So that's how I would respond to that, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you're planning to make the upper floors where people are going to be doing research? Can you talk a little bit more about what you want that to feel like?
Yes, I would, and I'm going to ask Iris and our colleagues to jump in as well. The thing that I have heard from the time I've been here, I haven't been here that long, I'm just coming in on 2 years, but as I say, I have been a regular user here since I've been a kid. And the complaints, the concern, and also manifested in the many surveys that were done asking researchers what they wanted, there were 3 things that jumped off the page. One was quiet space to work. 2, better bathrooms. And 3, a place to get a cup of coffee. And we've tried to respond to those. Of that, the issue that is most important to me is the quiet in the research space. We have taken steps to try to improve that level of quiet in the Rosemain Reading Room by limiting the south side of the building to people using collection books from our collection, creating a little corral that enables tourists to take their photos and go away, The responses I've gotten have been very positive about improvement there, but there's still a distance to go. My sense of it is that part of it is the traffic flow in the building that has been problematic. We have almost 3 million visitors to this building. It is a public library. Building a cage around the reading room is clearly not a possibility for us, unlike our academic partners where you have to show a card, you have to be vetted. This is a public institution, and I think we cherish that and try to maintain that issue. But our thought was that if we were able to contain the public functions around Astor Court, to create a necklace of 3 exhibition spaces, to have a cafe, to put the bookstore there, to give tourists an ample filling, shall we say, or a set of some pleasures and possibilities when they came, that we would be able to discourage movement up to the extent that we possibly could. On 2, we'll be opening a number of other reading rooms. You saw pictures of those. There's that middle corridor in 2, if you know the floor, that would again be open for quiet study and research. On that floor, making 2 focused on research in a way that it hasn't been until, for recently anyway, and then making 3 the sanctum sanctorum for researchers in the Rosemary Reading Room and in the catalog room. If the question is, am I going to keep everybody out of that space who isn't a card-carrying researcher? Of course not. What I'm trying to do is to maintain and create traffic flows that will aid and abet the project of creating greater quiet and greater peace in those spaces. Again, as you heard Liz say, my position in all of this is, is Hippocrates. I mean, do no harm. The point is not to damage the physical space. We are stewards of this extraordinary building, but also not to damage the public nature of the institution. So that what we're trying to do is to serve the many constituencies that arrive here, to serve in the best possible ways. Ditto the opening of a research center on the ground floor. The idea is not to flood the space with school groups. We're talking about high school and college kids, but to be very sensitive to the fact that research is imperiled, in my view. I mean, I'm not an alarmist. I don't think the sky is falling on a regular basis, but of course I've stopped watching the news at night, so maybe that's why I feel that way. Golly. But the idea would be to create opportunities for high school and college kids to learn that research is more than Googling, that the history of the world is not contained in your smartphone, and to bring groups in. I think for some of these kids, and when I say kids, I'm talking about high school and college kids, not little kids. We're moving at the teen space and the children's library across the street. But to persuade folks not only that there is more to research than popping open your phone, but how exciting it is. I think most of us who do research will remember how we got involved in the first instance. And I'm trying to recreate that, and at the same time create traffic flow that maintains that on the ground floor, with the prospect of bringing people up and taking a look at our exhibition space, but to do everything that we can to preserve the sanctity of the second and third floor research space. Sir?
Thank you. I wanted to commend the design team. I think that the allocation of the public spaces, the new spaces that you're creating on the ground floor, really are a great plus for this building. I was wondering if you could be a little more specific about square footage of exhibition space, current versus what's going to be, in the future. Because I'm just curious whether you actually are expanding the exhibition space or if it's the same. And secondly, is there a way to download the master plan?
Friends?
In terms of the question of how much we're adding, I don't have every single number tabulated in my head. The library shop is about 900 square feet, not including the additional, the sort of non-original addition to it. So if you know Wachenheim, the gallery, what we're doing is we're creating, as Bill said, a pair to that across the hallways. So that's an additional 900 square feet that we're providing of gallery space on that floor. And of course, including, in terms of permanent exhibits, Gottesman Hall, which is about 6,000 square feet of space, which would have this, what we call permanent rotating exhibition. So it's a significant amount of square footage, which also, I should note, is going to be in proper environmental conditions. Not some of the exhibitions that happen, particularly on the third floor, the corridors can't maintain that level that we want to have in order to have the types of items for the special collection. So we want to make sure that we're doing these in spaces that we can very much control the environment. And I would say probably more than square footage, that is really our objective, to make sure that we have the right scale of spaces with the right environmental conditions.
If I could just follow a bit on that with Liz, the goal is to be respectful, and more than respectful, but to not simply to steward the physical building itself, but also the books, the manuscripts, the special collections that we hold, hence the desire to be able to show things, but in conditions that are sensitive to preservation and conservation, and at the same time also to be attentive to our staff as we work to the design phase to make sure that they are housed in appropriate and professional space. The other thing I would say about gallery space, and again, thank you for your kind comments, sir. We would be adding new space in the former bookstore. Gottesman, which as most of you know has been largely dark over the last several years. That hurts my heart every time I walk into the building, and the goal is to open it again to the public, but with a spectacular show for which we are this close to getting a major gift to support the build-out in a really world-class style so that it will be open and show both a semi-permanent collection, again being respectful to the preservation needs of the documents in question, but also a variety of rotational space as well. The other point of this that I'd make, and then I'll ask Iris for comment, has to do with Astor Hall. And when I walk into that space, and when I look down from the balcony, I see the statues, the busts of Career and Hastings. And I look out and I see the spilling out of the bookstore into the lobby and Amy's bread under the stairway. And I feel like, if they were alive, they would die. No, they would be interested in driving the money changers out of the temple. So part of what I'm interested in doing is clearing that space, moving the bookstore back. They don't move it out because they don't spread out because they are barbarians or Philistines. It's that space is inappropriate to the tasks that they've been assigned. So moving that into South Court opens Astor Hall, recovers its gravity and its dignity, and at the same time serves those broader interests. Iris, did you want to respond?
So you asked the question, will the presentation be up?
Yes.
It will be. We just first wanted to have these meetings before we put it up. The video you can get on YouTube, so you can watch it again if you'd like to.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I have a question about the staffing. The staffing of the library was larger in the past, and it included binders, it included conservators of paper and so on. It included very, very qualified and erudite reference librarians. It included curators of collections such as the missing Slavic collection now. I mean, it's not missing, it's here. It's just not curated. And it included many, many people who were there to help scientific researchers, which many of us have been since high school, also here. And it's gone. It's really not in evidence anymore. There are a lot of very highly paid administrators, very highly paid. Librarians don't cost that much, actually. Librarians are much cheaper. And they're very, very well informed.
I would say a number of things about that as well. That running a library at the moment involves the kind of curatorial work that has been always true in the past when the library was exclusively print-focused, but it also requires building a digital staff since the lion's share of contacts in this library come online, whether we like it or not. That is the case. Resources need to be expended to support both sides of the house, and we try to do that and to do it well. We continue to spend a great deal of money in acquiring print, 50,000 plus volumes a year. But we also spend a great deal of money acquiring databases and supporting them with staff. The issue about building a staff continues to be a primary concern. When I started, there were 3 major curatorial positions we were looking to complete, one in Latin America, one in the Middle East, and one in Slavic. We have, I'm happy to report, found funding for the Latin American curator. That position is currently, search is underway to identify the best possible person for that position. And we continue to try to identify resources for the Slavic and for Middle Eastern. There are some leads in both cases, but nothing that I would call imminent. So that's what I would say. Yes, sir, with Kaplan over there, and then Michael, I'll pick you up next.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A new vaguely described stair and elevator bank is proposed for the South Hall. This is a radical alteration to the structure and design of this building. Carrere and Hastings designed, well, before my second question is this. We've looked at a lot of renderings tonight which included key plans in the corner. And rather coyly, when showing that staircase and elevator bank, that was rather coyly omitted from the ground plans. So we don't really know where exactly is this stair, hall, and elevator bank to be located, number one, and is this really a legitimate dialogue when you withhold key pieces of information such as this? Carrere and Hastings designed a intact and beautiful staircase in the South Hall that connects all levels from the ground floor up to the well, with the 5th floor with the mezzanine. Why is another stair needed? There is already a stair in the North Hall that connects from 42nd Street, the ground level, which is the same level as 40th Street, by the way. You were wrong about that when you said that it didn't go all the way down. It does. The elevator does go down to the ground floor.
Can I ask you to ask a question, sir? A lot of other people are waiting to speak.
Okay, but why do you propose so much redundant vertical circulation in the south portion of the building? There's already a staircase.
That's a question. We'll stop there and we'll answer the question. I would note before I ask Iris and the architects to respond, this is the first time in my life I've ever been accused of being coy. My wife will be amused. Iris, you want to start us off, or Francine?
Respond to it architecturally in terms of where it is. There is a stair, an existing stair that does not go through all of the entire building on the ground floor on the south.
This one?
Yes, that one. Because we are activating the ground floor, meaning at the entrances that are on the 42nd and the new 40th Street side, we need an elevator and stair core that connects to that. You know the building well, so that you know that the loading dock bifurcates east and west. So that stair that you're referring to on the southwest side does not do anything for us in terms of the Center for Learning and Research for people to go up into the building. We do not want them crossing the loading dock. So we felt like that would be a good place for a stair. It's not in a historically significant space with intact finishes, so we felt like it was the right place for a sensitive insertion of a new core, which includes elevators, because right now we only have one core of public elevators in a building that we think requires 2, particularly with the amount of public space that we're going to be opening.
Don't you have one in the South Court?
We have one in the South Court, but it doesn't go to all the places we want it to go. It does not stop on that floor. And just to clarify, Francine was correct in what she was saying. What she was referring to is that there's, in our terminology, a cellar level. Sometimes we call it a basement.
Oh, the cellar.
The cellar level
Yes.
does not get access from the north elevators.
Correct.
And what we're doing is that's what she was talking about, extending it down. So that we're just trying to provide more access to that very lower level in order to use it better.
Right.
Michael?
Yes, I'm confused by the timing, because if the idea is that we're going to get input from the public and from the users of the libraries, I was last week at the board meeting, and the board has already approved the budget. That makes it a done deal, so that confuses me about the timing. We seem to be committing a huge amount of money to changes like decommissioning the map room and then chasing other stuff out of the Milstein stacks. And during my research stints here, getting a cup of coffee has not been my priority, but I couldn't read the labels on the wine bottles at the bar. And I heard at the trustees meeting the conversations about opening that cafe up and taking over part of Bryant Park, which is totally redundant to the other restaurants, etc. But when this building was designed, and here's a timing problem, it was designed outward from the stacks. The stacks were the main part of the building. That was the purpose of the building. And we seem to be designing and spending a huge amount of money, which is then going to be given an excuse to sell Sybil, which shouldn't be sold and doesn't need renovation.
Right.
And we're inverting the process where we're going to design everything and then figure out what to do with the stacks afterwards. So why is the timing like this? Why does the board approve something when you don't have a true master plan? Why are we designing something when we don't start with the true purpose of the building and start with the stacks and we don't even know what we're going to do with the stacks?
No, let me split that. The board has approved an outline, which you've seen tonight. It is an outline. Further comment, further input will be put into place both by the public and by the board. I shouldn't have said both and because there are multiple constituencies. But the board itself, they're not entirely convinced about some aspects of this. They will continue to discuss, so too researchers, so too staff. But the board approval was necessary to begin the process. In terms of the stacks, I think you heard Tony earlier, rather than coming to people with a fait accompli, that was here, this is what we are doing. They commissioned BB&B, the great expert in terms of historic preservation, to take a look, to present some options, to discuss scenarios with appropriate constituents groups, to come back with what they've learned, and we'll take it from there. Yes, ma'am.
The stacks with the books, the architecture, the furnishings are irreplaceable. I was doing research years ago. I was tortured and still feel electronics, radio waves on, in, head, and body. Physical health is essential. I found a book that described fumes infused through ceiling globe. The furniture is made of fine natural material, wood, marble. Cafe in the library. You are not to debase, you are not to dishonor this amazing place. The books in the stacks must stay. The architecture and furniture must stay.
Is there a question in there, or that was a statement?
That was a statement.
Thank you for that, then. Yes, sir.
Okay, I just have a general concern about the relative honesty of the presentation. You're saying this state-of-the-art auditorium needs to be redone and money spent on it?
Right.
I mean, this is a fabulous auditorium. What does it possibly need? And when you talk about state-of-the-art, it's just wiring. I mean,
We're not talking, Irish, you want to respond to that, please?
So you picked on this auditorium, right? Clearly this auditorium is over 20 years old. And a lot of the audio-visual stuff that has been done over the last 20 years has changed, as well as... Sir, I listened to you. I would hope that you would listen to my response back. And, you know, there are some other acoustical issues that we'd like to deal with in this room, but that's the work that we would like to do as a result of the investigation that was done by both the architects and the engineers. But you've picked actually a very small part of phase 3. So, you know, there are other parts of the building as well that will have to be upgraded.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Can we pass the microphone to this lady?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Would you speak up?
Wait, the microphone's on the way.
Thank you.
I'm not a librarian, so my question is a little bit broader than some of the ones in the room. But one comment that was made was that you were going to expand, and Mark said he was going to expand the use of toilets as well as renovate, and yet in the master plan there's only renovation mentioned. But the thing that I wanted to ask is that you mentioned that there's the primary collections and the permanent collections, and I know that there are many personal collections here, and there was no mention of those, and are those combined in that?
Let me ask Iris to respond to the bathroom question, then I'll try to understand what you're talking about.
So you notice I get the bathroom questions. The books. So actually, we are renovating all the bathrooms. We have added another ladies' room here in the library. It's actually on the ground floor, right where we put the temporary Mid-Manhattan Library. So that's the one addition that we did make. But all the other bathrooms, all 22 bathrooms, will be totally renovated.
Okay.
And then if I might ask you to repeat the question about collections, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I didn't follow.
Yes, in the description of the master plan, they mentioned the primary collections and the permanent collections, and yet I know that there are many private collections here, and I'm wondering where those fit into the definitions, or where do they fit into?
I'm not sure where the use of primary and permanent, but let me respond. Everything that is in the library, everything held here is permanent. We do not deaccession. We do not hold private collections. We hold collections that people have given to the library. The dividing line is between the general research collection, which is available when you come to the desk in Rosemary Reading Room and ask for a book, and it is brought to you. The special collections require visits to curatorial space. These are rare books, manuscripts, and so forth. Frequently they would be, I think what you mean by family collections, collections of papers and so forth, that would be brought up and served in that space. Part of what the next set of months involves, and I see Denise Bay in the room who is spearheading this effort, is trying to decide the best ways in which special collections can be protected, preserved, and served in security to the public. But nothing is going away in that sense. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mr. Kelly, I hate to take issue with you, but I participated in all of the public meetings that led up to this plan. And when researchers were asked for what their concerns and for their needs, the concerns that came up were certainly not the need for another coffee shop, and they weren't even the need for another bathroom. Much as the existing bathrooms need to be upgraded. The overwhelming and broad consensus was that what researchers needed was more books and better access to those books. When I look at this plan, it's not clear to me how this plan advances that need, that interest. And I wonder if you could address how it does.
I come late, so I wasn't part of those conversations, or not all of them anyway. I've looked at the surveys that were done, and those issues came off the page. Researchers are not a monolithic group. Different people feel in different ways. As for the more books and broader collection, I share that view. We just added 7 million, count them folks, 7 million new volumes to our catalog, and they are available. You see a small note at the bottom that says Princeton University Library or Columbia Library or Harvard Library. I think it's hard to underestimate the significance of providing access to our patrons to 3 of the great private research libraries in the world. I take great pride in that. As for delivery, the stewardship of these volumes are at the top of my list, and keeping them in appropriate conditions while at the same time ensuring expeditious delivery is what occupies me first, second, and third in terms of this job. Yeah.
Excuse me, I understand,
Yes, ma'am.
sir, I understand
You've had
that,
your
but
question,
you're
sir.
spending
We've got
hundreds of
10 other
millions of
people and
dollars
10
on
minutes
this
to go.
plan, and I would like to know how any of that money is going to advance what through your own process was identified as being a very significant primary interest.
Right, well, you don't think that that a renovation of the reading room, of the building of the Milstein Stacks, of the delivery of these books on the book train, of being able to open more reading space for researchers, of trying to manage traffic flow so people have an opportunity to read in peace. If that doesn't qualify as supporting research, then sir, we disagree.
How does a restaurant do that?
Yeah.
Again, the restaurant, I'm sorry, Iris, go ahead.
So let me just say that Bill is right. I guess what one person wants, another person doesn't want. We did have a lot of surveys, a lot of input. We did hear that loud and clear that may not be these researchers in this room, but there were people who were very loud and clear that felt that a cafe was needed here at the library. If at the end of the day, it's determined that people don't want a cafe, or we can't site it in the right place, or it doesn't really make sense, there won't be a cafe. I mean, this is just...
You could go in the basement. You don't need to use one of the prime reading rooms on Fifth Avenue.
Sir, this is a master plan, and you're absolutely right. This is what if. What if we heard what people said, they said they wanted a cafe. What if we put it here? But this is just a rendering. This is just an idea. It's not cast in stone.
Hi,
One question per person, yes ma'am, because we only have about 15 more minutes.
Oh, yeah. My name's Susan Smith-Peter, and...
Hi, Susan, nice to see you again.
Hi, my name's Susan Smith-Peter, and I was happy to work with the library to put up an exhibition that just closed yesterday on the Russian Revolution. I do see that the Linux Astor Room is in the former Slavic room. I was wondering if it might be possible to have perhaps exhibits there that have something to do with the Slavic world. As an idea, that's one question, but the other thing I want to talk about is the Center for Learning. I have brought students here. I teach at CUNY, so there's a very strong connection between the library and CUNY. And so I've actually done the kind of work here and know the kind of spaces that need to be used. I'm glad to hear from you that that's just a rendering, because when I saw the rendering, I thought that this does not make sense for the kind of functions that it would be serving. It's a long, narrow room, and there aren't places. You need to have places where people can look at stuff on tables. You need to have banks of computers. You need to have places where people can listen and talk. And so I would hope that all those things would be encouraged and part of it. And in addition, of course, yes, there is the question of the stacks, but I do feel that that sort of bringing in students needs to be supported in a way that makes more sense architecturally.
So I think the one piece that, if we went through it very quickly, is that there are breakout rooms, just what you pointed out. If you're looking directly ahead at that space, to the left, there are two very large breakout rooms which would serve just that function. And as for your point about wanting to have exhibits on the Slavic collection, one of the things we would be able to use this new space that we're creating for exhibits for just that. So that's the whole purpose of having this additional exhibition space, so that we could possibly show some of the Slavic collection that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. To that point, Susan, I mean, thank you first of all for curating that exhibit. Terrific. It's a pleasure to see it the other day while you were there. But what Iris says is exactly right. I mean, what we're trying to do is expand the possibility to show the 50 million items that this library holds, to show them in ways that excite people's interest in research, and also to continue to maintain a presence for areas where we have great strength but have not been able to develop a kind of curatorial presence to date. Continuing to work to do that, but also creating other spaces where we might be able to do as you have just done in the last week. Yes, ma'am.
You keep the use of these stacks a mystery still. You don't know how they're being used. What I don't understand is why they have not already been upgraded, if that's what you need, the temperature control, the humidity control. Why has that not been done? Why are the books still stored out of the library so that it is very difficult for researchers or anyone to have use of them? You're spending all that money for storage. That could have been used to upgrade the staff.
So, I know Bill has said this before, and I just want to reiterate the point that, you know, the Milstein stacks have opened, and you have, what, 1 point?
Well, the stacks when they were
Overflow.
closed.
They're only for storage. You're
No,
using them
that's-
for storage.
No, I'm just talking about the Milstein stacks. Below
Overflow,
Bryant
they
Park
were.
is, has how many, slides?
It has a capacity
The
for 4
4 point,
million,
we
we
have-
now have 3.3.
And we're adding to the collection each and every year. I think that from our perspective, and I think Bill said it and Tony said it, what we're hoping is that the stack study will really put in a context for us what exactly the stack should be used for. Would it be books?
Stacks are the stacks.
No.
Why are they not being used for their original purpose? That's how they were built.
I think that we have been polite and asked that you just listen. So, what you're, as was exhibited by the,
Yeah, have another coffee shop and then
if people want to be disruptive, we can end the meeting now, or we can continue. But we have been very respectful of you and all your questions, and we would ask that you do the same, okay? I mean, it's rude to really not let us answer the questions up here. We're answering all your questions, we're having you ask us all these questions, so please, just hear us out. So I think that what we're hoping to do, as you saw with that slide, there are conditions, what needs to be done in terms of, if we were to put the books back, just as Bill said, the books in Milstein, the books at Recap are at the proper temperature level, the proper care for these books. So we would like to have the time to be able to study that.
We'll then change the air conditioning.
Yes, ma'am, in the back there. Yes, lady, thank you.
Well, you've mentioned various scenarios for the staff for study, various scenarios. Can you elaborate? Can you give us an idea of what some of these scenarios
That
might be?
process has just begun. Our friends at Breyer Binder Bell will be coming back to us. Binder Bell will be coming back to us with some ideas. Internal and external constituencies will have an opportunity for input and for discussion. These things will be priced and examined, and we'll have further conversation. At the moment, you don't have an open-ended study if you go into it with an idea that you know what you're going to do. And at this point, that doesn't exist. Sir? Yes, sir, please.
Okay, it's about the Children's Center being moved to the Mid-Manhattan Library, and
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, sir.
the Children's Center being
Yeah.
moved to the Mid-Manhattan Library, and I think you mentioned is they'll just fit in better with that. Or I just feel in the past it's been a experience, like a family-friendly experience to just explore the building and visit the Children's Center, and if it gets moved there, when you move it, do you think you'll have the same kind of a family-friendly atmosphere once the renovations are complete, or will there be other alternatives?
Thank you. That's a question we have all discussed and been concerned with. The idea is to create synergy between these two buildings. I mean, you could take a 9-iron and hit a golf ball over to MML. The idea is to create pathways between the two institutions to encourage precisely that kind of synergy, that we would support with public programs that were family focused. We have a good many of them now, would want to increase them on both sides of the street. At the same time, we were looking to try to create zones in which researchers were doing their work, tourists were seeing exhibitions. We were moving young people in through the Research and Learning Center and creating opportunities across the way with the Children and Teen Center in MML. The exciting part about this project, I think, is that we bring the largest circulating branch probably in the world, across to this great research library here, and to put the two entities into conversation without disrupting the capacities for scholarly work. Thank you. We have, just to give you, and then we have about 6 minutes left, so I'm going to try to call on people who haven't had a chance to speak. You, sir?
Yeah. One of the lessons learned from the pivot in terms of
one of the lessons learned from the pivot from the Central Library Plan was that we shouldn't be replacing research-based assets with non-essential services. As someone who uses the bathroom and the map room, I'm really aghast that the storage space is being converted into a cafe. Now, take it for granted that this building needs a cafe. Why did you decide to put a cafe there? Can't it be put somewhere else?
I'm going to ask Iris to address part of that, but let me again, well, actually, Iris is speaking, and I have something I'd like to say on that as well.
So again, let me just say, sir, that this is just an idea. It's not cast in stone, okay? It's just a rendering. It's just a what if. So to say that we definitely decided to do this, I think is not correct. The second thing is that when we spoke to the curators of the map division, they felt that the current space that the maps were being stored in were not adequate in terms of temperature and lighting. And they had approached us about moving the maps to a better situation. So the maps, regardless, will be moved to a better circumstance for them here in the building. And if a cafe doesn't go there, maybe it will become another reading room or another public room. But we will put it back into some type of public use so the public can use it.
That Iris's last point was the one that I was going to make, that the point is to get the maps out of a place where they are not well cared for because of the conditions. Reopen that as a public space. And whether that space is a cafe or a reading room, to be determined. Yes?
You have talked about...
Excuse me, I'm asking Ms. Levick a question, sir.
It occurs to me that the library might save some money at some point when the temporary materials leave the stacks. The library might save some money by returning books to 42nd Street, not pay recap fees, and have more space available in the future for new acquisitions in recap. By doing this, by bringing books back to 42nd Street, there are going to be an awful lot of happy researchers who now don't necessarily use 42nd Street and answer all the questionnaires because we are desperate to get the books in a hurry, so we go to Columbia, we go to NYU or someplace else. We appreciate those 7 million books added from Harvard's library. There's no question about that. We're all delighted that we have access to them. But we really, really want access to the books on site. And we are hoping that by the end of this process of managing the library, that books, the study will say that those stacks should be used for books for which they are ideally suited.
Well, I thank you for that. They are not, I mean, they are ideally suited in their location. They are not ideally suited in terms of their environment. Part of what the study will undertake is what would be involved in, I mean, there's so many different parameters here. I mean, this is not, we're not at the same place we were some time ago. Milstein stacks are open and delivering books. Recap has become a device to generate 7 million new volumes. But we can, exactly, I'm saying, but none of this is in conflict. It's all part of the conversation. Again, I'm not prejudging any of this. We asked our architectural partners to consider options, to talk to constituents, and we'll see where it takes us. We have time for one more from you, sir.
Yes, you talked about the stacks, and the thing that, of course, has been consistent, you say you don't have any preconceived ideas, but the one consistent idea is the stacks are empty of books. And that is a horrible thing, because you talk about access to Columbia. Well, that's one of the dreadful things that happened from the time I was a graduate student at Columbia to now. If you go to Columbia, if you go to the Society Library, it takes you 3 days to get many books, which used to be in the open stacks that you could go and just pick up and see, and by having them there in the stacks, find other things which you didn't even know were there. Exactly. And for frustrating. And that is impossible. An appalling situation.
go on a survey what they want, well, of course, there are people who might go to LaSerp and say, oh, I would like a good book here. They should have a library. But that is not what people who use libraries say foremost they want when they come to the library. They want to have books and they want to have access to books. That's the point of the library in the first place.
Well, I would argue, sir, that we have 4.3 million books awaiting your attention.
But I would say
and
that
another 15 million that are within
but I'd
the
say
daily
that
reach.
they are available to us in a way that makes them difficult and delayed to access, and that is an impairment to the experience of using the library that greatly diminishes the quality of what it used to be like to do work here.
Thank you for that statement, and thank you all for being with us this evening. There will be additional opportunities. We're going to have another meeting in December, so thank you for your time, your attention, and your civility.